3DRAP's Ngasa pedals are undoubtedly eye-catching, featuring a mechanism that's completely unique. Nothing else out there resembles anything close to what we have here, so a very interesting product for me to test and review. How do these pedals feel and perform? If you follow the channel, you know the score. In the first part of this review, we're going to examine the features of this product, taking it steady, one pedal at a time, and then onto the track for the evaluation. So that's the format, let's get started. The carbon fibre pedal faces I don't believe are standard. Metal pedal faces are the regular ones included, is my understanding, and the carbon ones I have on show here are an optional extra. The features of the throttle and clutch pedal are essentially the same, other than the pedal face and the shape of the cam. The cam being the rolling metal piece that sits between the pedal arm and two torsion springs. The shaped cam gives each pedal its distinctive feel. The rear torsion spring is clearly visible. The torsion spring at the front is hidden around the pedal arm pivot. The end of the torsion springs rest on these bars. The bars can be moved to increase or decrease the preload on the spring, and in turn alters the weight resistance of the pedal. The non-contact Hall sensor is housed in this 3D printed section. The pedal angle is fully adjustable. The brake pedal uses a load cell, so the working parts are different to the throttle and clutch, but still complex in its own way. The pedal arm pushes into the lever, then the lever presses into the elastomer piece that sits on top of the load cell. There is a gap before the lever reaches the elastomer. This can be reduced or eliminated by moving the pedal stop. For changing the pedal feel, we have multiple adjustment points. The block holding the load cell can be moved vertically. When set in a high position, this magnifies the leverage pressing into the elastomer. This makes the pedal feel softer. However, this will incur a penalty. The increase of leverage reduces the force required to saturate the weight limit of the load cell. We have different elastomers we can swap out, progressive and linear. The lever will need to be unscrewed and lifted to release the elastomer. Reseating the bolts is a more fiddly task, as there are 4 small washers that need to be positioned on either side of the frame. Changing the elastomer has made a difference to the pedal firmness and travel. The final arrangement is the most involved procedure I'm going to show you. We're currently running the long pedal travel mode, but there's also a short pedal travel mode, and to swap between them we'll need to change 2 connecting points. I'm swapping back to the softer elastomer as it will better demonstrate the difference between the pedal travel modes. With the pedal back on the rig, we can compare these differences more precisely. The pedal resistance feels quite soft here, and it takes a medium amount of effort to fully hit 100% braking input. Now the short pedal mode, the leverage is restricted and it's noticeably stiffer and the pedal motion is reduced, needing my full effort to reach 100% braking this time. What appears to be a small alteration to the pedal mechanism has a significant impact. The NGASA pedal software covers the basic features of setting the dead zones at the beginning and end of the pedal movement and adjusting the load cell force braking limit. Updating the firmware is a more complicated process than it really should be, and clicking on the new firmware available link takes you to a YouTube video guide on the procedure and a download link for the update. I'll post the YouTube video link below so you can see that tutorial for yourself. I'm not going to run through the firmware update process here. I must confess, this review is long overdue. These pedals arrived a couple of years ago and were my main pedals for about 12 months back then. I got sidelined with other projects and indeed covering other pedal sets, and for quite a while now I've really wanted to cross this one off my to-do list. So here we are, finally. Since I do have extensive past experience running these pedals, the first thing I can acknowledge is these pedals are reliable, showing no signs of wear. They have stood up to the stresses over time. They are essentially as good now as they were when they arrived, so that's a good start. Maybe not a massive surprise, they are stainless steel and those metal parts are thick and durable. You will have observed there are some 3D printed features. Those components also haven't shown any damage or wear, so those aren't technical weak points, but some may consider FDM 3D printed parts undesirable considering the price point of the NGASA pedals. The clutch has an authentic clutch pedal sensation, where the throttle resistance is more linear, as it should be, and that's entirely down to the configuration of the cam. The cam rolls over the bearing and against the torsion spring resistance. The profile of the cam is shaped to change the weight of the pedal resistance as it rotates. The connecting parts use bearings, so the operation is smooth. Besides the resistance, the pedals have a slight rough texture that comes from the cam rolling over the bearing. You might assume that this mechanism is noisy, but that's absolutely not the case. These are some of the quietest pedals I've used. The clutch feels great, the balance of travel, firmness and the effect is well tuned. As for the throttle, it's not quite perfect for me. I find the throttle pedal travel is just slightly too short to my personal preference. I like a firm throttle pedal, and even despite having two torsion springs, this is closer to a medium weight. You might anticipate the exotic cam system makes this pedal feel amazing. That's not the case. It's no better than other throttle pedals that use a spring. This is doing the same thing, just more complicated. It doesn't feel special. I would even go as far as to say I prefer some throttle pedals I've used on cheaper pedal sets. I don't have to like it, but I can live with it. 3DRAP could have done better here. Earlier I demonstrated the process of adjusting the brake pedal. Nothing complex, but certainly time consuming and fiddling with small parts, and any adjustments must be made with the pedal unmounted. So be prepared, at least initially, to spend the downtime to get the brake set up. The brake uses a load cell, and that means braking should be precise and consistent, and this is very much the case here. I have no issue in this regard, it functions very well. I'm operating the pedal with full confidence using my muscle memory to apply the exact measure of force into the pedal to slow the car down without locking up. My preferred configuration is running the brake with the lever set in the short pedal mode, essentially the default mode. I think this is the best option. The long pedal mode softens the pedal and increases the pedal travel, which some may prefer, but at the expense of increasing the leverage onto the elastomer, hence the reason for the lighter pedal resistance. It's simply an adjustment to the leverage, which means less weight is required to hit 100% braking input, so it takes less of your foot force to max out the brake. Perversely, I do prefer the feeling of the brake in this configuration, but the reduction in braking performance is unacceptable. My opinion of the default short pedal mode is for braking performance, it's the optimal setup. The sensation of the pedal though is frankly unexciting. Indeed, long pedal mode isn't exceptional either. The elastomer plug is the spring that supports the pedal. They are small with limited capacity to compress. The feedback from the brake leans entirely on this elastomer. You can see the pedal movement as I push into it, but from my perspective, the pedal doesn't feel like it's moving much at all. I watch back this footage and the motion I see here isn't reflected in what I actually feel. I don't feel progressive spring resistance or pedal motion, just I'm pushing into an almost solid mass. I'm not saying it's not an effective brake. It is, but it doesn't feel like a brake I've ever used before. It's weird feeling, and this does take time to get used to. For the price of these pedals, I expect a whole lot more. The simple feel of the pedal doesn't impede its essential function of controlling my braking accuracy. I'll give it that. The load cell itself is sensitive with a high weight capacity. I'm modulating my braking from the tension and stress I feel from my leg and foot, and not anything I'm taking from the resistance or motion of the pedal. Maybe that's not entirely the case, but that's the impression I have. Despite all I've said, I remain strangely fond of these Nagasa pedals as a whole, in a strange Stockholm syndrome sort of way, I suppose. They were my main pedal set for the best part of a year, and at the time I had other options available. Maybe it's because these pedals look badass, and I've always found them to be reliable and accurate, and the build quality is sound. Returning to them a year later, I'm reminded of some of those good qualities and also some of the other ones that aren't so desirable. 3DRAP went a step too far in their attempt to stand out from the crowd with this unique design. No one can deny if you walk past them, you'll stop and take a closer look, so, something's worked here. But at the end of the day, we don't have a complete winner here. Not my favourite pedals, but definitely a most interesting and original design, so they deserve some attention for that.